Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome to my first video after the 2022 midterms, and we're going to be talking about just that. So I know that it's been 4 days since election day, or 3 days I guess, um, and I am very sorry that I was not able to make this video sooner, but this is technically my first of a couple of analysis videos talking about the results of the midterms, and it was not good for the Republican Party, to put it lightly. In fact, it was, it was really, really bad. Democrats very much exceeded my expectations. I had a feeling that they would, based on the polling errors that we saw over the summer, and seeing how well they had performed in those special elections after Dobbs. And I made a point of that of in my prediction videos, saying that Democrats may still be ahead and may be underestimated by these polling numbers. And for the most part, and I did believe that there would be some error, some polling error that would potentially benefit Democrats, but not to the extent that we got. It was something that was astronomical. We have never seen this kind of underestimation of Democratic support in states that have pretty much been have overestimated Democratic support by a lot. So yeah, let's get into it. Before I start, talking a lot more, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Um, Turn on and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss another video. And yeah, let's get right into it. So, even though we do not know who has control of the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate yet, we have a pretty good idea of what has happened, and that, Democrats have massively outperformed. This House map, too, is very, very weird and was not what I was expecting. As you can see, we have we have the majority of competitive races we have, filled in, and for the most part, it was a wash for, the Democratic Party in a lot of these competitive races, though Republicans did have, some highlights in picking up some seats in Florida and New York. And, I guess we can talk about the seats that they did pick up, because New York was really like the shining, it was the shining exception for the GOP, and that was mainly due to the fact that at least from what most people, including myself, believe, was, Kathy Hochul's unpopularity and Andrew Cuomo making the races in New York a lot more competitive. Lee Zeldin really helped the GOP, and he allowed them to pick up quite a few seats. Pat Ryan, who is in a Biden +9 district, and outperformed Biden in that August special election, um, in a significantly redder seat, only barely got by. Sean Patrick Maloney, who was the chairman, or who's the D triple C chair, has been defeated by Michael Lawler. This was not something that I expected. Mark Molinaro was able to win over Josh Riley. Republicans even flipped two seats in Long Island. They had a really good showing in New York. Zeldin's seat went to the GOP by almost 12 percentage points. They won the second by 21 points. They won the Staten Island district by almost 21. The only district we have left to call is the 22nd, and that looks like it's going to go Republican, but we still don't have a clear answer there. So New York was a shining exception, and Florida was as well. If we go to Florida, we can see, the Senate results, and Marco Rubio did very well against Val Demings, as did Ron DeSantis over Charlie Crist. Both of them, just swamped, the Democrats in these races. Demings lost by 17, and or Rubio won by 17, and DeSantis won by almost 20 points. They both won Miami-Dade, by nearly double digits. I mean, look at this ridiculous map of Florida. Ron DeSantis is someone who only won by, a hair 4 years ago, has pretty much turned Florida into a safe GOP state at this point. He won Miami-Dade by 11 points. He was able to win Palm Beach County. I mean, I knew that Charlie Crist and Val Demings weren't going to win, but I didn't think that they were going to perform this terribly. And, when you see a lot of these Trump candidates also losing simultaneously, and you see DeSantis doing so well at the top of the ticket in Florida, that's going to be something that Republicans look back and, maybe see as, a sign that they should run him instead of a more Trumpy candidate for president in 2024. And I think this really does open up a lane for Ron DeSantis. I had a feeling that, I remember my last governor's prediction. I did say that Florida could honestly be safe based on the early vote data, but I did not think that DeSantis nor Rubio were going to win by safe margins. It was a very poor showing for, the Democrats. I knew that they were not going to win in Florida, and they ended up losing many House seats, but they really underperformed a lot of expectations. Now, the rest of the map wasn't so good for the GOP. In fact, it was pretty bad. As you can see in a lot of these Midwestern states, Democrats were able to hold their ground. They were able to hold on to Illinois 17. They barely lost Ron Kind's seat in Wisconsin. This was not something I expected. This is a very right-trending seat, and Brad Pfaff was able to outperform Joe Biden in 2020. Pretty, just something to think about. Michigan, John Gibbs predicted, which, expectedly, um, lost, but he lost by double digits. Tom Barrett lost to Alyssa Slotkin by 5 points. Dan Kildee was able to win by almost double digits, and John James, even though he had tons, or Carl Marlinga, even though he had barely any money, and John James was pretty much a shoo-in in this race by the end of it. Republicans only were able to win this seat by less than half or by less than a point. So, and that, I know that the abortion referendum in Michigan really did help Democrats, especially Gretchen Whitmer at the top of the ticket, and that translated down ballot, but I did not expect us to see this favorable of results. As you can see, Indiana, Frank Mervyn was able to win re-election. I was wrong about that seat. Iowa, Sydney Axney did lose her re-election, but by a much smaller margin than I thought she would. Ohio, though, was a big shock. Now, I had a feeling that I was going to be wrong about Ohio, about the ninth district. I just didn't want to bet against Republicans in working class seats. Um, Copter was able to win by 13 points, which is not something I expected. Shabbat lost in the first district, which I did expect, but it was by a lot more than I thought. And then the big shocker was in Ohio 13, where Amelia Sykes was able to win Tim Ryan's House seat, even as Ryan, barely outperformed Joe Biden at the top of the ticket in the Senate race. If we can go to the Senate race right now. Ryan, did well, considering the national circumstances, but he still, did not really do much better than Biden did. It's still something that, it still says a lot about his candidacy that he outperformed Biden in a much redder year, than 2020. But, still, it didn't really seem, I had this race as lean Republican, and Democrats were able to win this race by 5 points. Ohio is a state where the polls have been very much wrong. And, the only one of these seats that I was able to correctly predict was Ohio 1. And even there, I was hesitant because I knew that Shabbat was a very strong incumbent. But, didn't want to give it, I didn't give it to him because, he wouldn't have been able, it was a Biden plus 9 seat, and it was, he would just need a massive overperformance to get that. In Pennsylvania was a wash too. Republicans, the only competitive district, I guess you can say, even though the first district isn't really competitive, was, that they won was Brian Fitzpatrick's seat, and that was pretty much, a foregone conclusion by election day. They lost the 17th district, which I thought they would. They lost the 8th district, but then Susan Wild, even though everyone thought that she was going to lose, and she was the only Democrat who really got screwed over in redistricting. She was able to win by 2 points. I was shocked when I saw that Pennsylvania 7 was colored in blue on this map. I really did not think that Wild was going to win. I didn't necessarily think it was impossible. But I mean, this is a very good sign for Democrats that they were able to hold this seat that only went to Biden by less than a point. And when you go down to Virginia, it was looking really bad for Abigail Spanberger at the beginning, but then, Prince William County, the results from Prince William County came in, and she was able to, catch up to Yesli Vega. Jennifer Wexton beat Hung Kao by, a decent amount. Elaine Luria lost. So I'm proud of my results in Virginia. I got all the results or all the districts right. I did overestimate Luria though because she lost by 4, and I had her losing by less than a point. So Virginia was pretty much lackluster for the GOP. In North Carolina 13, even though Bo Hines really seemed to have the advantage here, and there, pretty much no one expected this race to go blue either. Wiley Nickel was able to defeat Hines in this race and was able to pick this seat up, even as Ted Budd defeated Sherry Beasley by 3 points at the top of the ticket you know. In Texas, you also had some competitive races here. I'm so glad that I gave the race to Henry Cuellar, because I was very split on this race. I had it as tilt Democratic, but he won by 13 points. Of course, Vincente Gonzalez beat Myra Flores, which was expected. Republicans, though, did get the 15th district, so I called that one right. Going up to Kansas, you also saw Sharice Davids win by 12 percentage points, which was actually pretty accurate compared to the New York Times, to the Siena College and New York Times polls that came out for the House races, which is pretty surprising because we saw some of those polls come out earlier, the last couple of weeks, and it was pretty accurate compared to the results. In Nebraska too, Don Bacon did win, but only by about 3 points. In Montana one, this one really shocked me as well. I know that I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm just kind of going through these House races right now. Ryan Zinke was only, he even though he wasn't a very strong candidate, he was only able to win by 3 points in, I think this is a Trump plus 7 seat. I said that this district might be competitive in the future for Democrats, but I never thought that, this race was going to be all that close. And Colorado free, everyone knows what's going on here. Adam Frisch is, in a very tight race with Lauren Boebert. It does look like Republicans are going to end up winning the seat since the votes keep shifting towards Boebert, or the results keep shifting in favor of Boebert. But it's going to be by a much smaller margin than was expected. Yes, there was good polling data for Frisch, and he had a ton of money. But at the end of the day, this district, which went to Trump by 8 points, should not be this close. And it really shows how bad of a candidate Boebert was, and how good of a night this was for Democrats. I mean, this race I had this as likely Republican. It was bordering on safe. Honestly, I did not really, well, I don't know if I'd say it was bordering on safe, but it was practically safe, or at least so we thought. Colorado 8, this is a very suburban, left trending seat right outside of Denver. I had this race as lean Republican. It looks like Democrats might actually win this race, especially when you see that Joe O'Dea did not do that well in the Senate race here. He outperformed Trump, but not by that much. New Mexico too looks like it's going to go to the Democrats. Gabe Vasquez is currently leading. But we still don't have an official call from NBC. David Schweikart in Arizona is in a surprisingly competitive race. I had this race as lean R as well, and he's losing to the Democrat here. And so it does look like that. I still would bet on Schweikart winning. But it's not looking too good for him. This is in Arizona 6. Ann Kirkpatrick's seat is pretty much a dead heat right now. At the same time, you go to Nevada, you can see the Democrats swept all of the competitive races here. Susie Lee was the only race I got wrong here, and she won by a lean margin. California, we don't really have a lot of data there, but it does look like the Valadeo might be able to win. I still would put my money on Rudy Salas, but we don't have enough data really to make an accurate prediction. Oregon, we got the governor's race called for the Democrats recently. It looks like the fifth district's going to be really close, but I would still put my money on Republicans winning it. The or the sixth district, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go, but I think it goes to the Democrats. And then up in Washington, Kim Schreier won her reelection, and the third district, which was Jamie Herrera Butler's seat, is pretty much a dead heat right now. I mean, I thought that Joe Kent was, going to make this race a lot closer than it should be. But I had the race as likely are. I thought the Democrats might be able to win it, might be able to flip it in 2024. It looks like they may flip it now, honestly. And, even, Tiffany Smiley did really well in this district at the top of the ticket, but Joe Kent is really underperforming national Republicans. You can see, so, pretty much the message here from this house map is that, Democrats have, been doing really well. If you go up to Maine too as well, you can see that Jared Golden is doing a lot better than I expected, but it looks like that, he's going to be held under 50%. And so, that'll go to a second round of ranked choice voting. And of course, Alaska, Mary Peltola is, going to win, pretty clearly, but, I think, there's probably going to be another, round of, ranked choice voting. So anyways, after all that rambling, we can look at some of the other results. So I made this little map of the Senate and governor elections. So the ones that are highlighted in deep blue or red have been called for either party. This is not based on margin. But the ones that are slightly lighter blue or lighter red, do not have calls yet. But the Democrats or Republicans are leading. So as you can see, Nevada and Arizona haven't been called yet. But Mark Kelly looks like he's going to win there. He's leading right now. And in Nevada, it looks really, really close, but Laxalt is currently leading Cortez Masto, and Georgia is going to a runoff. But we're going to go through the results here really quickly. We're going to go through mainly Pennsylvania. I'll talk about some of these other Senate races in time, but I'm going to go to Pennsylvania because this is the race I got wrong. I had this race as Tilt R. I was pretty generous, honestly, to John Fetterman when you compare it to other forecasts. A lot of people moved this to lean Republican after the debate. Dr. Oz did not do well, and that's, putting it lightly. I thought that Fetterman had a really good chance, but the fact that, the fact that he was already down in the aggregate in a state, in the polling average on election day, in a state that, overestimates Democratic support most of the time in polling, you know, I thought that, Fetterman had a good chance, and that polling data, that polling error that was, possible, at the time and, did come to fruition, could help him. I thought that, Oz was, a very slight favorite, but he ended up losing by 4 points, and it looks like he's going to lose by more. You go to the governor's race as well. Was pretty confident Josh Shapiro would win, but I didn't think he was going to win by double digits. He's won by 14 points. Mastriano didn't even win, Beaver County. He lost Cumberland. He came very close to losing Lancaster, which is a very Amish, this is pretty much Amish country. It's very conservative, very rural. He lost Berks County. He did terribly in the Philadelphia suburbs, and he really dragged down Oz in the Senate race as well. You can see even Luzerne went to Josh Shapiro, so Shapiro really did help Democrats out in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania, is not necessarily a ticket splitting state. That it's had pretty, there's been a lot of outperforming on the part of candidates before, but never really split ticket results, and this year continued that. I was shocked that Fetterman was able to win, was called the winner, so early. You know, was called, was projected to have won this race, in the early hours of Wednesday morning. I was, still, I was pretty surprised that he was able to hold on, or was able to, not only win, even though it wasn't too shocking to me, but to be called so early, and the fact that he was underestimated by almost 5 points in the state. He really didn't do much worse than Joe Biden. So yeah, Pennsylvania was pretty good for Democrats. We can go to some of these other races as well. Wisconsin, Ron Johnson still won, and I'm glad that I put it as lean Republican. Because that would have been, it ended up being a lot more accurate, but I overestimated him. We've heard from the right about how Ron Johnson's is always, a massive overperformer, and they like to push this like narrative that for some reason Ron Johnson was supposed to lose both in 2016 and 2010. He was only supposed to lose in 2016 for the record. The polls actually overestimated him in 2010, and that's what happened here. Mandela Barnes also was not the best candidate for the Democrats to run. He was decent with turnout in Milwaukee and Madison, but he did not do. He was not their best choice, and this race was really a mixed bag for Democrats. One second it looked like we could win it, the other second it looked like a lost cause, and it turns out that maybe if we put a little bit more if there was a little bit more money invested, Mandela Barnes might have actually been able to defeat Ron Johnson. And, it's pretty, it's pretty sad that Democrats weren't able to get out Ron Johnson, but still this was a pretty impressive showing for them. What was even more impressive is that they were able to win. Let me go back. Is that they were able to win the governor's race. Tony Evers was reelected. Not only that, but he won by a larger margin than he did in 2018. I had this race as a lean Republican. um, I never said that it was impossible for Evers to win, and I thought that Michaels was the candidate that could lose to Evers, that was most likely to lose to him. But I never thought that it was going to be this large of a margin. Or even, a defeat at all for the Republicans here. Evers is someone who only won by 1 point in 2018, and this is a significantly redder year, a redder national environment. So it really looked like he was, really a significant underdog, but he has ended up winning, and he clearly helped Mandela Barnes out. So that's clearly something to be celebrated by Democrats. Ohio, of course, was a disappointing. It was disappointing to see Tim Ryan lose, but you know what I mean. He still helped Democrats down ballot, and he had an impressive showing. New Hampshire also, Maggie Hassan, outperformed Joe Biden. I thought that she was going to win by around 3 points. There's a lot of consideration that Bolduc might be able to win. And he ended up losing by more than Donald Trump did. He underperformed him, which is not something that I expected. Even when I had New Hampshire in the likely D column, I still thought that Hassan was going to narrowly underperformed Biden, and it turns out she almost won by double digits. It really goes to show how strong of an incumbent she is and how, poor of a candidate Don Bolduc is, you know and also just it really goes to show you the same pattern that that a lot of people, including myself, have been trying to convey, that these candidates that Trump puts up and that the GOP has been nominating are not electable candidates. And in some of the other governor's races, we just got a call from Oregon, or a little while ago we got a call from Oregon. Tina Kotek was able to win. In Nevada, Joe Lombardo has been projected the winner, but the Senate race is still really close. Arizona is also looking very close. Katie Hobbs, I think, is probably still going to lose. We got a lot to come in from Maricopa, which is going to be a big shift, which is going to be, probably a Republican-friendly vote. But it's probably not going to be enough to put Masters over the top, but it could very well be enough for Lake. And that my guess is that Lake still ends up winning this race. In Kansas, this was another race that I was wrong about. I thought Laura Kelly was going to narrowly lose, but I had a feeling I would be wrong about this race. Um, Democrats were able to hold on here, and the reason why I had Derek Schmidt winning was because, unlike in a state like Oregon, where there was a fairly strong independent candidate and a pretty poor candidate from the incumbent party. I mean, not that Laura Kelly's the or sorry, well, Laura Kelly is a very strong incumbent, but at the same time, Derek Schmidt was a pretty okay challenger. He wasn't anything special, but I mean, he was still much better than Chris Kobach, and the independent didn't really seem to be doing a lot, to give Kelly the victory here. Every time I'd go to make a pathway for her, really didn't seem that possible, but I never counted her out, and it does look like she has won well, she has won a re-election in Kansas. So, that's a pretty good result for her. But anyways, I'm rambling. I did not really have a big focus for this race. Excuse me. But as you can see, the general message that, I and a lot of people have been trying to get across is that the GOP did not perform well on Tuesday. And, they really underperformed my expectations, even when I thought that, even when I was one of the more generous people to the Democratic, side or the Democratic Party's chances. I did not expect the House to be this close. I didn't expect Kansas or Wisconsin to stay blue, you know, and I could be even, I could still be wrong about, some of these Senate races. I think that I have a feeling that I'm going to be wrong about Nevada. I can't, John Ralston came out with his final report right after, I made my final Senate prediction, and he said Cortez Masto is going to win. So technically, I might be wrong about that one because Ralston's really, accurate with his predictions. And Cortez Masto, is really playing catch up in this race. But yeah, this has been a really disappointing year for the GOP. They really blew their chance here, and Democrats really defied history. Joe Biden is, the most unpopular president since Harry Truman. And, this has pretty much been, the best year for the incumbent party, the party of the incumbent president in governorships since 1986. This is pretty much like a 1998 scenario, where if you don't know, 1998 was a really bad midterm for the GOP. It was, Bill Clinton's second midterm, and he was going through the second impeachment, or not second impeachment, his only impeachment process, and the country did not respond well to that, and it was a pretty surprisingly strong showing for the Democrats. Of course, I think a lot of this performance now has to do with Roe versus Wade and the bad candidates that the GOP has put up. But anyways, we'll see. I'll be making more videos talking about the rest of, the results that come in, and I'll also be, making updates and, some videos about the Georgia runoff, throughout the next month, as, up until December 6th, and I'll give my final prediction for that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, share the video, turn on notifications, check out my non-political channel, Interactor127, and my comrade, Growlings666. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This has been a really crazy election season, a very interesting election to watch, and I'm really looking forward to the future of the channel. I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.